Okay, let's make it. Okay, get started. Okay. Just a point about the last week, and then another point about the mitzvah of mitzvahs of mechusei kapol, and then we'll move on to mitzvah Shem back to Ein Gimel, and then it will be the mitzvahs after mechusei kapol. Okay. Just 2 points. It's very clear from the Rambam that the Arbo Mechusei Kapora are obligated to bring their Korban even if they don't want to become Toho, to be also Kochim, but they have to bring it. And it's a chiyuv. The Ramban I pointed out last week, in Vayikra, Perich of Gimel, Hosik Tesvav, seems to say that Sfira is the Sfira Shivalikim is Rishus. Okay. And the fact is that the Ram clearly says in Mitzvah Say Kuftes that Tmeim don't have to be Metaya. So the question is, at what point does a Mechusei Kapora go, or does he change for that he doesn't have to be Metaya, that he's Chayav L'Taya? So all I just want to point out, and I think I pointed out, but I'm going to add another point. I pointed out last week that the Lashon that the Ram says in each one of three of the four, except for the Yoledis, because the Yoledis is no food, there's no machal. The Ram says Kishisrape. So you get the impression that in the point that he's mischape, he's obligated to bring a Korban. And he's obligated to continue further to make sure that he's able to bring the Korban. So, according to that, at the point that the ziva stops, so there's a chiv tara, and then I would assume he has to do the shivnei kiyum, not because the chiv shivnei kiyum, but since the chiv tara in order to bring the korbanos, he'd have to do it. The interesting thing which I want to, and what it comes out is that the tara prior to the Mechusei Kapara is just a Hagdama. It happens to be a mitzvah, but there's no chiv in that mitzvah. But you look at it, on the other hand, there's a Hagdama to the mitzvah of Mechusei Kapara, and he'd be obligated to do it. The interesting thing which I want to add is the Lashon of the Rambam in the Protei Mitzvahs in Hilchos Mechusei Kapara. The Rambam says, "Shetakriv hazovo korbono kishetitaher," and that is basically the same lashon as by all the four Mechusei Kapara. So the chiyuv is when he or she is toho, there's an obligation to bring the korbanos of Mechusei Kapara. So, a priori, once you medayik that a Mechusei Kapara can basically remain tomei, but after they are toho, they're obligated to bring the korban. Again, shetakriv hazovo korbono kishetetaya. Next. Now, this is an aside. Mitzvah Shemay will have to add another point or two here to the mitzvah, but I don't want to do it tonight. We look at the Mishnah at the beginning of the second parak in Krisos. There is another member of the family there, which is Yaakov, but it's Machus Kapor or not, but it's something they call Ger. And a Ger, if he doesn't bring his carbon, is not allowed to eat kochim. As the Ram says in Hilchos Machus Kapor, Perik Aleph Halacha Beis. And other Rishonim say it's a question of Lo Bakol. So once you basically have some type of let's say equation between Mechusei Kapora and Ger, and that they can't eat kochim without the korbanos, and each one of the Mechusei Kapora are mitzvahs nifrodes. So one asked the question, or could ask the question, why isn't there mitzvah for Ger, a separate mitzvah for Ger, to bring the Mechusei, their korban, the korban ager? And the Ram does not count it in Minyan HaMitzvahs. So the obligation of a ger, as we see in the more increases in Testament Aleph, is Hochem Kavoiseichem. And it's from the Parsha of Niskei Korban in Bamidbar Tezayin Yudalid to Tezayin. And Kochem Kavusechem, that they have to be a Korban, it's stam a pshat in Psukim. It doesn't seem to be a pshat, it seems to be stam a drosha, not a pirush mekubal. So l'cheira, according to the second shirish, that a mitzvah which is learned from a drosha, which is not a pirush mekubal, is not minyan mitzvahs. That is the first possible answer. The second possible answer it's not clear at all that a ger shemal v'toval is obligated to bring the korban ager. Maybe there's no mitzvah at all. It's just if he wants to eat kochim and complete the geris, he has to bring a korban. But who says that b'chlal, that he has to do it? But and it's not a mechusei kapor. Just to stress this, the ger is not a mechusei kapor. It's just that he can't eat kochim. The Ram in Hilchos mechusei kapor perek Aleph halacha beis ger shemal v'toval v'adayin lehevi korbonoi af al pi shu osa lechol b'kochim Ad she'ovi karbono, eino mechuse kapora. He's not a mechuse kapora. Shekarbono ikvo liois ger v'liois kachol kish Yisrael. It's just the gerus is not complete, but it's nothing to do with mechuse kapora. V'vnezeh eino oichel b'kochim she'adayin lo nasa kish Yisrael. V'kiven she'ovi karbono v'yasa Yisrael kosher kash Yisrael kosher oichel b'kochim. So Ram says that it's a tangential equation, but he's not really mechuse kapora. Okay. So just so it's clear that it's not a mitzvah according to the Rambam. We don't know if he has to bring it. And those were the 2 points. Now, let's go back now fast and see what we can do here in the mitzvah of vidui. Mitzvah ein gimel. Hamitzvah sholosh v'shivim hish zivonu l'zvadis al avonos v'achatoim. The double lashon you don't find in the Ksavyad, you don't find the in Ibn Eyav, in Ayuv, in Kapach. It's just either chatoim or avonos. Shechatonu lefonov yis'ala. So we discussed it last time we talked about it. The pashtus is that it's a chet b'ifnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shechatonu lefonov yis'ala b'dvorim be'esh noshu b'hem. So we discussed about the question whether vidu is lifnei Hashem or the chet is lifnei Hashem. B'dvorim that vidui should be vocal. But it's not ma'akiv in tshuva that he might not be a Rosh. We talked about the issue that Makadish Shamanashi Shanit said the Rosh Shemakadish Shamanashi Tzadik is Makudeshes Shemahil B'tshuva V'zeu Avidui V'kavanosai Sheyoima On Hashem Chotasi Ovisi Pshaiti V'asisi Kach V'kach V'yach Amar Li'vakesh HaKapora. He should be marich and he asks for kapora. V'zeu Inyan Lefi Tzachos L'shoina, according to his oratory abilities. Now, an important issue is that the Lashon Rambam, especially in Ibn Ayyov and Kapach, is be'ez shenoshuv mehem. The mitzvah's vidui is at the point that he does tshuva is a mitzvah of misvada. But you don't get the impression at all that tshuva is part of the mitzvah. And that is the plain reading of the Rambam Perek Aleph, was tshuva aloch aleph. Kol mitzvah shebatayr v'chulei. Kisheyase tshuva v'yoshuv mechetoi. Hama chayiv lisvadas lifnei hakel. Min hakotzer. Lisvadas lifnei hakel mikol chet שיעשה האדם. בשעת הכל ושלא שנאמר והזוודו את חטאתם אשר עשו. There's no mention of tshuva, and that's the minchas chinuch. And that is the approach of Nachman Kachovsky in his letter to the Rav. And l'cheira, that is the what it seems to be clearly in Sefer Mitzvahs, in Mishnah Torah, at least in Halachos, in Perek Aleph Halacha Aleph. So the Rav's opinion, the Rav's opinion is that it's you can't say such a thing, and he heard from father in the name of the Beis Halevi that tshuva is part of the mitzvah. And the truth is, the Pratim mitzvah mashma like that, but I don't know. It's difficult to read it into the Rambam. In Pratim mitzvahs it says, "V'hu sheyoshev achoytei mechetoi lifnei hakel v'yizvade." L'cheira, it seems that the mitzvah is tshuva is part of the mitzvah. The mitzvah is to do tshuva. And to be misvade. Another raya, according to the Rambam, that tshuva is not part of the mitzvah, is the Rambam who was tshuva. Perek Zayin, Halacha Aleph and Beis. Hol v'shus kol odom nesunaloi, kmo she'isbano, yishtadel, ha'odom lasish tshuva. Ulenaye kapov mechetoi, kedei shiomus v'hu bal tshuva. It seems to be like a good idea. Kmo she'bi'an. Kedei shiomus bal tshuva, kedei sheyizke l'chayim haba. V'olam yira odom atzmoi, kilu chleite, kilu noite lomus, v'shemo yomus, b'shaitei, v'nimsa oimed b'chetoi, and it's not going to be good for him. Lefikoch yoshu mecheto miyad. V'lo yoima, k'sha'as kinoshuv. It's a mitzvah tshuva. It's to do tshuva. It's ganze Meise. However, when he does do tshuva, or at the point that he does tshuva, he's chayiv in the mitzvah of vidui. And it's almost like the mitzvah mezuzah. You know, if you don't have a house, you don't have to put up a mezuzah. If you live in a house, you chayiv mezuzah. If you don't do tshuva, there's no mitzvah vidui. If you do tshuva, you chayiv. You have to do vidui. Question is, the Rambam in Hilchos Tshuva, Perek Beis, Halacha Zayin, Yom HaKippurim hu zman tshuva lakol, liyochel l'rabim, v'hu zman ketz mechila u'slich liYisrael, lefikoch chayovim hakol, laslish tshuva, u'lizvadis v'yom HaKippurim. Yom Kippurim, so you get the impression there's an obligation of tshuva, at least in Yom Kippur. So there's no mitzvah. What's the obligation? So it's not because of mitzvah tshuva, because of Yom Kippur. Chais? Because he has to avail himself of kapor. And without tshuva, there can't be kapor. Slich and kapor. You see, Yom Kippurim hu zman tshuva lakol. Why? V'hu ketz mechila u'slicha liYisrael. So, liyochid u'l'rabim. So even notice what he's saying, because if it's because of slich and kapora, so l'chei is no raya. Yom Kippur hu zman tshuva lakol. Nice. It's a mitzvah tshuva. I'm quoting Hilchos Tshuva, not in Hilchos Yom Kippur. So you have to think about this. The Ram in Hilchos Tshuva Perek Gimel Halacha Daled, Avo Pishkitz Ki Hashoyper Rosh Hashanah Gezeres HaKosov, Remez Yesh Boi Kloima, U Yisheni Mishinaschem, V'kitzu Mitem Mitada Maschem, V'chipsu B'Maseichem, V'chazu B'Tshuva. So you can imagine, it's also like a din, whether it's din in Yom Kippur, this is a din in Rosh Hashanah. Then it should begin introspective, because Yom HaDin. In Hilchos Tainiyos, in Perek Aleph, Halacha Aleph, Mitzvah Semen Ater Lizrek Oloria, B'chatzesa Kol Tzor Shetovoy, Al Tzibur Shnema, Al Atzar Atzer Eschem, V'Areisim B'chatzetz Reis. Kloima Kol Dover Sheyitz Alachem, if you you have anxiety because of the situation, whether it's it's disease, or whether it's milchama, going batzeres, or kilu a plague, v'deve, v'arbe, u'kiyetze behen, zaku aleihen, v'oriu. You should be zoik HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and blow chatzitz reis. V'dove zeh midake et tshuva. V'zman shetovu atzora, v'yizaku, Yedo Akol שבגלל מעשיהם או רואים הוא עליהן, ככוסו והמנסיכים הטו אלה. וזהו שיגו להם להוסי עצור מעליהם. So we learn from this, there's a mitzvah, be'eso, liz oikaloriya, which is midaki tshuva. But tshuva be'esora is not a separate mitzvah. It's a chelik of the zaka, that the zaka should conclude, be terminated, come to fruition through tshuva. But it's not a mitzvah tshuva. It's a mitzvah of zaka be'esora, which the culmination is tshuva. However, the Ramban al Torah disagrees with the Rambam, and he is clear that the mitzvah is tshuva. Ramban in Dvorim, Perek Lamed, Pasuk Yud Aleph, he says, Aval mitzvah zeis, what's he referring to? He says very clear, Ala tshuva haniskeres, ki vashivoise el livovecho, v'shavto ad Hashem Elokecho, mitzvah sheyitzav elonu lasos kein. It's a mitzvah, it's a mitzvah of tshuva. However, the Ramban Esa himself, or the Pasha Psukim, is that tshuva is just a sipur dvom, that's what they're going to do. But there's no mitzvah. That's the culmination of Golus. People will do tshuva. V'nemu lashon habeni lilmois habahav tocha ki osid hadovelas liyos kein. So the Ramban is groping with how you make it to a tzivui, to lashon bein b'chais, and the other Rabba, you can learn that it's only sipur dvarim. That's the Ram does. It's a little difficult because he does that, to say that it's a mitzvah tshuva according to the Ram. The Ram in Hilchos Tshuva, Perek Zayin, Halacha Hey, Kol Neviim Kulam, Tzivu ala tshuva, Ve'en Yisrael Nigolim ele b'tshuva, Ukva Evticha Teira, Sheseif Yisrael Lasos tshuva, B'Seif Goluson, it's Haftacha. ומייד הם ניגולים, שנאמר, והוי כי יבואו עליך כל הדברים האלה, הברוכה והכלולה, אשר נשאתי לפניך, והשבריסה אל לבביך, בכל הגויים אשר ידעך השם אלוקיך שומו, ושבתו עד השם אלוקיך, ושמעת בקולו, ככל אשר אנוכי, וכולי. ושוב השם אלוקיך, אשבוסך ויחמך, ושוב וקיבצך מכל העמים אשר יפיצך השם אלוקיך שומו. So, it's only Avtocha. Ein mitzvah. Now, the Rambam continues and discusses what the nusach of vidui is. The kavanos hashiyoma on Hashem chotosi ovisi poshaiti v'yosisi kach v'kach. On Hashem is a expression of a supplication. Rashi in the Chemia, Perek Aleph, Posik Hey, Ono Loshen Bakoshu Tchina. Eben Ezra in Bereshis, Perek Gimel, Posik Yud Zayin, Ono Loshen Pius. And this is the vidui of Kohen Gadol, B'Yom Kippur, on Hashem Chotosi Visi B'Shait L'Vodecha, New Vesi. On Hashem Kapeh no, L'Chatoy L'Avoris L'Pshoim, Shechotosi Visi B'Shaiti. And Luchas Avodis Yom Kippurim, Perek Dal Eloch Aleph. It's honor, 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 honor. So we understand that the on Hashem Kapeno L'Chatoyim, that's about kosher. But the first on Hashem Chotosi Avisi Pashaiti, what's the bakosher? So the Rav said that the first honor is a bakosher from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that the Rebbeinu Shem should help us look and be introspective and to understand and to be makir, to be honest with ourselves and know our chatoim. And another way you could say, it's not, the Rav said that it's a bakosha from HaKadosh Baruch Hu to help us do tshuva. But could be something else and could be completely different. Because prior to tshuva, the Ram Mishnah is very clear. The man is rochuk from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Ram in Hilchos Tshuva, Perek Zayin Aloch Avov, Emesh hoyezeh sonui lifnei amokoy meshukot meruchuk v'toeva. So since he's distant from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, man is petrified to be misvada, because he has no connection to God. He's completely meruchuk, meshukot, toeva. And therefore he's mischanin on Hashem. So he asks for koyach lamoid lifnei yis'ala in order to misvad. So Sisi on Hashem chotosi avisi poshaiti v'osisi kach v'kach. Osisi kach v'kach means that the mitzvah's vidui requires pirut achet. Yushalmi Yuma, Tony Tzoch Lifot Es Maasov. Rabbi Yehuda B'Seira. Rabbi Kiva ain't Tzoch Lifot Es Maasov. My time, Rabbi Yehuda, Ono Choto Om Azeh Chato Gedol V'Yasu Lehem Egel Mas Elohei Zov. V'chein Hilchos Tshuva L'Ram Tzoch Lifot Es Achet Shenem On Hashem Choto Om Azeh Chato Gedol V'Yasu Lehem Elohei Zov. So Ram explains it more about Richus. But we learn from the Moshe Rabbeinu that this is the nusach of vidui. So then he says v'yachav amayra kilu hamama, or you could say lefi roichav l'shoinoi. V'yachiv amaymo, one is ibn ayub and ibn kapach, but he's tzarichas loshen. The Rambam is also that Inyif Marichus is in Perek Aleph, Halacha Aleph of Hilchos Tshuva. V'chol amarbe lizvades umarich b'inyan zeh harizeh meshubach. The Rambam over here clearly says that the request for kapora is part of the mitzvah's vidui. But the Rambam Mishnah Torah leaves out the whole idea of Akoshes kapora. Perek Aleph, Halacha Aleph, Ketzad Mizvadeh. Oime, Ono Hashem, Chotosi Avisi, Poshaiti, Lefonecho, Vosisi Kach V'Kach, V'Hari Nichamti, Uboishti, B'Maasai, Lo Lemei Nichoizel Dovazeh. Zeu Iko Shavidui, B'Chol Amar B'Lizvadeh, Marich, B'Yin Zeh, Harizeh Meshubach. So the Arichos is on the Chagoto and the Kabbalah, and there's no mention whatsoever of Kapara. However, the Ram Nuchas Ma'aser Korbanos in Perek Gimel Halacha Tezvav, Ketzad Mizvadeh, Oime Chotosi Avisi Poshaiti V'Asisi Kach V'Kach V'Chozarti B'Shuva L'Fikoch Poshati or Chazarti B'Shuva L'Fonecho V'Zo Kaporosi. B'Yom HaKippurim the Kohen Gadol and Bakoshes Kapora. And the shloshim in the all three viduyim. Kapeno lachatoyim labunis pshoyim shechotosi vish b'shait lefonecha ani uvesi or ani uvesi b'nei Yisrael. So this is all nice. In the Rambam Sefer Mitzvahs, the Bakosh Kapora is part of the mitzvah. But according to the Rambam Mishnah Torah, that's not the case. So why are these cases special? What's going on? So according to the Rambam, it's not part of mitzvah's vidui. It's a peculiar din of korban, of Bakoshes Kapora for korban. So it's only and avodas Yom Kippurim and ma'aser korbanos. The only problem is that the Rambam, by Korban Chatas v'Osham, the Baal Korban Oimeh says, Harizu l'kaparosi. And he's not, he says, Harizu l'kaparosi. He's not mevakesh kaporo. And Yom Kippurim, he's mevakesh kaporo. On Hashem kapeno. So you could say there's a peculiar din in Yom Kippur to mevakesh kaporo because it's man miyuchad for kaporo. As the Ram says, Yom Kippurim peribeis aloch hazayin, avichus tshuva Yom Kippurim huzman tshuva lakol kol yochel rabim v'u kates mechil v'slichel Yisrael. So you want to take advantage of it. So maybe part of this is bakoshet kapora. Yushalmi in Yuma, Perches Halacha Zayin, you get the impression bakoshet kapora is part of vidui, like the Ram in Sefer Mitzvahs. Yirotzoy milefonecha Hashem Elokai shetchaper li al kol pshoai v'timcho li al kol avonosai v'sislach li al kol chatosi. Flach lonu, machal lonu, kapel lonu. But here in Mishnah Torah, he doesn't have it. Okay, next. V'da she'afilu hachatoim shechayovim aleihem elu haminim me'akarbonos niskolim. What does that mean? Oh, this before we said so to add something else. There's another difference between Mishnah Torah and Sefer Mitzvahs. That is the question of Charota and Kabbalah. Charota al and Kabbalah al. And in Mishnah Torah, you get the impression it's part of the basic concept, basic nusach of vidui. Charota al and Kabbalah al. In Sefer Mitzvahs, there's no mention at all. So, the Ram even in Mishnah Torah says, "V'zehu ikoi shel vidui." You get the pashut ikoi vidui, not mentioned at all. Truth is, frankly, there is discussions. You might find psukim and that in Nach they might mention a part of it with whatever, but we don't really know what the source of this is. So, but interesting. I just like to point out that you find And Rav Sadigon, both in his Siddur and in Amunis V'Deis, that he has this idea of Chalot and Kabbalah. But you see, the real problem is, and that's why you could have you don't find Chalot and Kabbalah in Vidya and Korban. And especially since the source of the mitzvahs vidui is learned from Korban, and there's no chalot in Korban when you bring Korban. We don't know such a thing. This is a problem. But the Ram seems to be took Mecholis and Mishater one way, and in Sefer Mitzvah is just the opposite. So, okay. Next. And Safas L'Shoinoi is a very interesting expression. The Ram uses this, that the mitzvah tefillah is also Safas L'Shoinoi. Where there's a mitzvah to verbalize something, the mitzvah is the person should do it according to his auditory abilities. Now, the Ram starts a new idea. ודע שאפילו חטאים שחיום עליהם אלו המינים מהקורבנות נזכרים, לכן הקורבנות נזכרים is החטאים שחיום עליהם או חטאס קבוע או אשם the mitzvahs before או אשם ודאי או אשם תלוי או אשם ודאי קורבן וירד mitzvahs samachtes time base she'oma yis'ale shemish yakrivom niskapeloi lo yaspik im akobosem bilti havidui. Without vidui, they're not mechape, there's no slicha, kapo, whatever, umroi. But it's not enough. The question what he means, excuse me. He says, she'omer shal shemish yakrivom this kapeloi, lo yaspik akobosam, this the kapoist is not lo yaspik im hakovosim built yavidu. You need the vidu for the kapor. V'omer yisal davmei Israel. Ish or isha ki yasu mikol chatas odom limo mal b'Hashem v'yoshma nefesh hahi v'izvadu es chatosam asher osu. So Now we're going to have to know, so what does it mean? Maybe it's only didn't Korban. Or maybe Kilo, it's a separate thing. Maybe it's independent of Korban. And Ram here, there's a whole Sifri Zuta. And Mit Hashem, you'll have to see the Sifri Zuta. The Sifri Zuta is Marich and Darshins, and the Ram takes the Sifri Zuta over here, Kilo, the Yisei of the Mitzvahs Vidui. He goes on and explains it in Mit Hashem. In Mit Hashem, the shir next week will be Tuesday in Mit Hashem. Batzloch. Freilich and Shavuos. Simcha Shavuos.